The air in Station Nexus 7's lower decks reeked of rust, recycled oxygen, and desperation. Kai Thorne pulled his worn jacket tighter as he navigated the maze of shadowy corridors, following the cryptic directions his contact had given him. The legitimate markets above buzzed with honest trade, but down here in the forgotten sections, different kinds of commerce thrived. Kai's weathered boots echoed against metal grating as he searched for Bay 47C. At 32, he'd seen enough of the galaxy's dark corners to know when he was walking into trouble, but his dwindling credits left him few options. The salvage job on Kepler 9 had been a bust, and his ship needed repairs he couldn't afford through legal channels. The bay doors hissed open to reveal a scene that made his stomach churn. Cages lined the walls, filled with beings from a dozen different worlds. Some huddled in corners, others paced like trapped animals. The air hummed with misery so thick it seemed tangible. "You the human looking for tech?" A gravelly voice made Kai turn. The speaker was a hulking Vorthak with cybernetic implants covering half his scarred face. His name was Grix Malover, according to Kai's contact, a trafficker who dealt in both stolen goods and living cargo. "Depends what you're selling," Kai replied, forcing his voice steady despite the horror surrounding him. Grix gestured toward a table of salvaged electronics. Navigation arrays, weapon systems, life support components, all untraceable. His black eyes gleamed with predatory amusement. "But maybe you're interested in something more exotic." Before Kai could respond, movement in a nearby cage caught his attention. A figure sat in the shadows, but even in the dim light he could see the faint luminescent patterns tracing across pale blue skin. The being was humanoid but distinctly alien, with delicate features that spoke of otherworldly beauty. "Ah, that one catches your eye?" Grix chuckled. "Vera Lynn of the Zephyrian colonies. Rare breed. They're empaths, you know. Feel what others feel, sometimes more than they'd like." He leaned closer, his breath reeking of synthetic alcohol. The previous owner said she was quite responsive to emotional stimulation. Kai's hands clenched into fists. "She's not merchandise. Everything's merchandise if you know where to shop." Grix's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Kai. 50,000 credits and she's yours, though I warn you. Zephyrians bond deep. She might be more trouble than you bargained for." Kai stared at Vera Lynn. Even through the bars, he could sense her watching him with intelligent, wary eyes. There was defiance there, buried under layers of caution and pain, but not broken, never broken. 20,000, he heard himself say. "It's all I have." Grix's laugh was like grinding metal. "You humans and your bleeding hearts? Fine, 20,000 for the empath. But don't come crying when she drives you mad with all that feeling." The transaction happened quickly. Credits transferred, ownership papers exchanged with sickening efficiency. When the cage door opened, Vera Lynn didn't move immediately. She studied Kai with eyes that seemed to look straight through him, searching for something. "I'm not him," Kai said quietly, understanding her hesitation. "I'm not going to hurt you." She stood slowly, graceful despite obvious weakness. The luminescent patterns on her skin pulsed faintly with each heartbeat, creating an ethereal beauty that made Kai's chest tighten with protective instincts he didn't fully understand. "Smart to get her off station quickly," Grix advised as he pocketed the payment. "Word travels fast in markets like this." Kai nodded, gently guiding Vera Lynn toward the exit. As they walked through the station's corridors toward his ship, he caught her glancing at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Fear, certainly, but something else, perhaps the faintest spark of hope. His ship, the Wandering Star, wasn't much to look at, but it was home. As they boarded and sealed the airlock behind them, Kai finally felt like he could breathe again. Whatever came next, they were free of that horrible place. In hyperspace, with Station Nexus 7 shrinking behind them, Kai looked at his unexpected passenger and wondered what the hell he'd gotten himself into. The Wandering Star hummed through hyperspace, its gentle vibration the only sound breaking the tense silence that had settled between Kai and his passenger. 3 days had passed since their escape from Station Nexus 7, and Vera Lynn hadn't spoken a single word. She'd claimed the small storage compartment Kai had hastily converted into a makeshift quarters, emerging only when absolutely necessary. When she did appear, her luminescent skin patterns flickered dimly, as if her inner light had been nearly extinguished by years of captivity. Kai found himself walking on eggshells around her, unsure how to bridge the chasm of trauma that separated them. He'd left food outside her door, simple rations that disappeared when he wasn't looking, but direct interaction seemed to cause her visible distress. "I know you can understand me," he said one evening, standing near her partially open door. "I've researched your people. Zephyrians are known for their linguistic abilities." He paused, running a hand through his dark hair. "I'm not expecting conversation, but if you need anything, just ask." Through the crack in the door, he saw her sitting cross-legged on the narrow bunk, her back straight in what looked like meditation. The patterns on her visible arm pulsed slowly, hypnotically. She didn't acknowledge his words, but he caught the slight tilt of her head that suggested she was listening. The fourth day brought a malfunction in the ship's atmospheric recycler. As Kai worked to repair it, sweat beading on his forehead in the increasingly stale air, he became aware of someone watching him. Vera Lynn stood in the doorway, her pale blue skin luminous in the dim maintenance lighting. "The tertiary filter is clogged," she said, her voice soft but clear, carrying a melodic quality that made Kai's pulse quicken. "Behind the primary coupling." Her first words hit him like a physical blow, not from their content, but from the trust they represented. Kai nodded, following her guidance, and found the blockage exactly where she'd indicated. "Thank you," he said as clean air began flowing again. "How did you—" "I can feel the ship's distress," she explained, wrapping her arms around herself. "All things that live emit feelings. Even machines have a kind of emotional resonance." She paused, studying his face. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone who would take what they paid for." Her luminescent patterns flickered brighter, betraying her nervousness. "Someone who would see me as property, not a person." Kai felt his chest tighten with anger, not at her, but at the world that had taught her to expect such treatment. "I bought you to free you, not to own you. When we reach the next safe port, you can go wherever you want." Something shifted in her expression, surprise perhaps, or the first stirring of hope. "You would let me leave?" "Of course. This is your choice now." For the first time since leaving the station, Vera Lynn smiled. It was small, tentative, but it transformed her face completely. The luminescent patterns on her skin brightened, creating swirling galaxies of blue and silver light that took Kai's breath away. "I haven't had choices in a very long time," she admitted. That evening, she joined him for dinner in the small galley. They ate in comfortable silence at first, but gradually, conversation began to flow. Vera Lynn spoke of her homeworld, Zephyros Prime with its crystal cities and floating gardens. Her voice carried deep sadness when she mentioned her people's fate. "The hegemony came when I was young," she explained, her patterns dimming with the painful memory. "They called it integration, but it was conquest. My people were scattered, sold, used for our abilities." She looked up at Kai, her large eyes reflecting depths of pain he could barely comprehend. "I was trained to be an emotional amplifier for entertainment, made to feel others' desires, their hungers, their needs." Kai's hands clenched around his cup. "That's over now." "Is it?" She studied his face with an intensity that made him feel exposed. "I can sense your emotions, Kai Thorne. You're attracted to me, but you're fighting it because you think it would be taking advantage. You feel guilty about the circumstances of our meeting, and underneath it all—" She paused, her luminescent patterns pulsing faster. "You're lonely. So very lonely." The truth of her words hit him like a physical blow. He started to deny it, but the compassion in her eyes stopped him. Here was someone who had been through unimaginable trauma, yet she was offering him understanding. "I'm lonely," he admitted. "But that doesn't change anything. You're free to choose your own path." Vera Lynn reached across the small table, her fingers hovering just above his hand. "May I?" When he nodded, she placed her palm against his skin. The contact sent a jolt through him, not just physical but emotional. For a moment he felt what she felt: gratitude, cautious hope, and something else that made his heart race. "You have a good soul," she whispered. "Wounded but good, I can feel it." As they sat together in the soft light of the galley, Kai realized that freedom was more complicated than he'd thought. She was free to leave, yes, but he was beginning to hope desperately that she would choose to stay. 2 weeks into their journey through the outer rim, the walls between Kai and Vera Lynn had dissolved like morning mist. Their conversations had grown longer, deeper, punctuated by shared laughter and comfortable silences that spoke of growing intimacy. Vera Lynn had begun to bloom like a flower finally receiving sunlight. Her luminescent patterns now pulsed with vibrant blues and silvers, creating mesmerizing displays that left Kai breathless. She moved through the ship with increasing confidence, her natural grace returning as her body healed from years of captivity. "Tell me about Earth," she said one evening as they sat together in the observation lounge, watching the star-streaked beauty of hyperspace flow past the viewport. Kai settled back in his chair, acutely aware of her proximity. It's not as exotic as Zephyros Prime. No floating cities or crystal spires, but there's something beautiful about its simplicity. Blue oceans, green forests, mountains that touch the sky. "I'd like to see rain," Vera Lynn said softly. "In the slave pens, I heard other humans talk about it. Water falling from the sky like tears of joy." "Rain," Kai mused. "I took it for granted growing up. The sound it makes on windows, the smell of wet earth afterward. My mother used to say storms were the planet's way of crying, washing away the old to make room for the new." Vera Lynn turned to face him fully, her large eyes reflecting the swirling lights of hyperspace. "You rarely speak of your family." Kai's expression darkened. "Not much to say. My father was a smuggler, not the noble kind who rescued people, just someone who moved contraband for the highest bidder. Got himself killed when I was 16. My mother tried to hold things together, but the debts..." He shrugged. "She died of a broken heart more than anything else." "I'm sorry." Vera Lynn's voice carried genuine empathy. "But their choices don't define you. I can feel your heart, Kai. You're nothing like your father." The sincerity in her voice made something crack open inside him. "How can you be so sure?" "Because you saved me without thought of reward. Because you've spent weeks trying to heal my wounds without asking for anything in return. Because when you look at me..." She paused, luminescent patterns swirling faster across her skin. "When you look at me, I feel beautiful instead of broken." The admission hung between them like a bridge neither was quite ready to cross. Kai felt his pulse quicken as she leaned closer, her alien beauty making his breath catch. "Vera Lynn," he whispered, her name a prayer on his lips. "I know what you're thinking," she said, her empathic abilities reading his emotional state with perfect clarity. "You're worried about taking advantage, about the power dynamic between us, but what if I told you that for the first time in years, I want to feel something beautiful? What if I told you that when I touch your mind, I find peace instead of pain?" Her hand found his cheek, cool skin against his warm flesh. The contact sent waves of sensation through both of them, her empathic gift creating a feedback loop of desire and tenderness that left them both trembling. "I want to choose this," she breathed. "I want to choose you." When their lips met, it was like the collision of two stars, explosive, transformative, inevitable. Years of loneliness on Kai's part and captivity on hers seemed to melt away in that single moment of connection. Vera Lynn's luminescent patterns blazed brighter than he'd ever seen them, painting the observation lounge in ethereal blues and silvers. Through their kiss, her empathic abilities created an unprecedented intimacy. He could feel her desire, her hope, her growing love, while she experienced his wonder, his protective instincts, his deep and growing affection. "Your quarters or mine?" he whispered against her lips. his voice rough with want. Yours, she replied, her patterns pulsing with anticipation. I want to be surrounded by your scent, your presence. They moved through the ship's corridors with desperate urgency, hands exploring, lips meeting in brief, heated kisses. In his quarters, Vera Lynn turned to face him, luminescent patterns creating a living artwork across her skin. I've never chosen before, she admitted, vulnerability making her voice shake slightly. Everything was always taken from me. But this is mine to give. Kai approached her slowly, reverently, as if she were made of starlight and dreams. We can stop anytime. Your choice. Always your choice. Her response was to pull him close, her lips finding his neck, her empathic gift flooding him with her emotions, desire, trust, and something deeper that made his heart soar. What followed was unlike anything either had experienced. Her empathic abilities created a connection that transcended the physical, allowing them to feel each other's pleasure, each other's wonder, each other's growing love. They moved together like dancers following ancient music only they could hear, her luminescent patterns painting their bodies in shifting galaxies of light. Afterward, they lay entwined, her head on his chest, patterns slowly fading to a soft, contented glow. I never knew it could be like that, she whispered. So gentle, so loving. Kai pressed a kiss to her forehead, tasting salt and starlight. Neither did I. You've changed everything, Vera Lynn. As they drifted toward sleep, wrapped in each other's arms, neither noticed the proximity alarm beginning to flash on the ship's console. Their moment of peace was about to be shattered. The proximity alarm's shrill warning shattered the peaceful aftermath of their lovemaking. Kai bolted upright, instantly alert, while Vera Lynn's luminescent patterns flared bright with alarm. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace, Kai said, reading the displays as he quickly pulled on his clothes. 3 heavy cruisers, military grade. Vera Lynn wrapped herself in a sheet, her skin patterns shifting to deep purples and reds. Colors Kai had learned indicated fear and distress. They found us. Who found us? But even as he asked, Kai suspected he knew the answer. The communications array crackled to life, filled with a voice that made Vera Lynn flinch. Kai Thorne of the vessel Wandering Star. This is Crime Lord Vex Corin of the Crimson Fleet. You have something that belongs to me. Kai's blood ran cold. Vex Corin was legendary in the Outer Rim, a draconian with a reputation for ruthlessness that made other criminals look like saints. His scaled hide was supposedly scarred from 100 battles, and his cybernetic eye could target enemies from impossible distances. I don't know what you're talking about, Kai replied, trying to buy time as he activated the ship's defensive systems. Corin's laugh was like breaking glass. The Zephyrian female. My associate Grix Malovar was quite distressed when she disappeared. From his inventory, normally I'd simply write off the loss, but this particular specimen has special value. Vera Lynn's patterns shifted to brilliant white, a color Kai had never seen before. He's lying, she whispered. I was never his property directly, but... Her voice trailed off as terrible understanding dawned. The experiments they did on me, they weren't just for entertainment. What experiments? Kai demanded. But the answer came from Corin himself. She didn't tell you? Your little pet was part of a breeding program. Zephyrian empaths crossed with draconian psychic enhancers. The offspring would be the perfect slaves, able to feel and manipulate emotions on a scale never before seen. She's carrying the genetic modifications that could create an army of psychic servants. Kai felt sick. You're insane. I'm practical. Return her, and I'll let you live. Refuse, and I'll take her from your corpse. The communication cut off, leaving them in tense silence. Through the viewport, Kai could see the 3 cruisers moving, into attack formation, their weapon systems charging with ominous energy. Can we outrun them? Vera Lynn asked, her voice steady despite her obvious fear. Not in this ship. The Wandering Star is built for stealth, not speed. Kai's hands flew over the controls, activating every defensive system he had. But we're not going down without a fight. The first volley of energy blasts lit up space around them, the ship's shields flaring as they absorbed the impact. Kai threw the ship into evasive maneuvers using every trick he'd learned in his years of running from authority. There, Virulin pointed to a sensor reading. That asteroid field. If we can reach it, the larger ships won't be able to follow. Kai nodded, pushing the engines to their limits. The wandering star screamed through space, dodging weapons fire and debris as they raced toward the relative safety of the asteroid field. They almost made it. A lucky shot from one of the cruisers struck, their port engine sending the ship spinning. Kai fought to regain control, but they were caught in the gravitational pull of a large asteroid. The ship crashed into the rocky surface with bone-jarring force. Hull breach in Section 3, Kai reported, his voice strained. Life support failing. Through the cracked viewport, they could see shuttles launching from the cruisers, boarding parties coming to claim their prize. I won't go back, Virulin said, her luminescent patterns blazing with desperate determination. I won't be their breeding stock. You won't have to, Kai promised, drawing his sidearm. I'll die before I let them take you. The sound of cutting tools echoed through the ship as Karan's forces breached the hull. Heavy footsteps approached their position, accompanied by the mechanical whir of combat armor. Last chance, Thorn. Karan's voice boomed through the ship's speakers. Surrender. The female, and you live. Kai's response was a blast from his energy rifle as the first boarder appeared. The firefight was brief but intense. Kai's skill against superior numbers and equipment. He managed to drop 3 of them before a stun blast caught him in the shoulder, sending him sprawling. Virulin screamed his name, rushing to his side as Korin himself entered the damaged compartment. The draconian crime lord was even more terrifying in person. Over 7 feet tall, his scaled hide bearing the scars of countless battles, his cybernetic eye glowing with malevolent intelligence. Touching, Korin sneered, his forked tongue tasting the air. The great mystery of human compassion. You threw away your life for a piece of merchandise. She's not merchandise, Kai gasped, trying to push himself upright. She's a person. She's a resource. And resources belong to those strong enough to claim them. Korin gestured to his soldiers. Take her. As the armored figures approached, something changed in Virulin. Her luminescent patterns suddenly blazed with colors Kai had never seen, deep crimsons and brilliant golds that made the air itself seem to vibrate with power. No, she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made everyone in the room stagger. I am not property. I am not a resource. I am Virulin of Zephyros Prime, and I choose my own fate. The psychic wave that erupted from her was visible, a shimmering distortion that slammed into Karan and his soldiers with the force of a tsunami. The draconian crime lord screamed as foreign emotions flooded his mind. Love, compassion, sacrifice, everything his species had tried to purge from their culture. The Assam soldiers collapsed, their minds overwhelmed by the empathic assault. Korin himself fell to his knees, his cybernetic eye sparking as it tried to process the impossible emotional data flooding his consciousness. Impossible, he gasped. The genetic modifications, they weren't supposed to unlock this much power. The modifications failed, Virulin said, her voice carrying absolute authority. But my people's natural gifts, those you could never touch. She knelt beside Kai, her hands glowing with soft light as she used her abilities to heal his wounds. Are you hurt badly? I'll live, he said, staring at her in wonder. But how? Love, she said simply. The experiments tried to suppress my empathic abilities, but love broke through their conditioning. Your love showed me who I really am. As they held each other among the wreckage, Korin's remaining forces retreated in confusion, their leader still reeling from the psychic assault. The immediate threat was over, but they both knew this was just the beginning of their fight for freedom. 6 months later, the twin suns of Haven Colony painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples as another transport ship settled onto the landing pad. Kai watched from the observation deck of the refugee center, his arm around Vera Lynn's waist, as another group of rescued beings stumbled into the light of freedom. 14 more this time, he reported to the colony administrators. Mix of species, some Altarians, a few Centauri, and what looks like a family of Epsilon Eridani natives. Vera Lynn nodded, her luminescent patterns pulsing with calm blues and greens, colors that had become her default state since they'd established their new life. I'll work with the empathic trauma cases, that young Altarian girl especially. She's broadcasting pain on frequencies that are making the others uncomfortable. Their partnership had evolved far beyond romance into something deeper and more complex. Kai had used his knowledge of smuggling routes and black market contacts to establish an underground railroad for trafficked beings, while Vera Lynn's empathic abilities made her invaluable in healing the psychological wounds of those they rescued. The refugee center they'd helped establish on Haven Colony had become a beacon of hope in the Outer Rim. What had started as a single building now sprawled across several acres, including housing units, medical facilities, and training centers where rescued beings could learn skills for their new lives. Any word from the Stellar Dawn? Vera Lynn asked, referring to their current rescue ship, a significant upgrade from the Wandering Star, funded by anonymous donors who supported their cause. Jace transmitted this morning. They've got 17 beings from a trafficking ring on Kepler Station. Should be here within the week. Kai squeezed her waist gently. That makes over 300 rescues this year. 312, she corrected with a smile. I keep count of every life we've saved. Their work wasn't without its dangers. Crime lords like Vex Corin, who had never fully recovered from Vera Lynn's psychic assault, had put substantial bounties on their heads. They moved carefully, used aliases, and maintained a network of safe houses throughout the sector. But, for every enemy they'd made, they'd gained 10 allies. Former slaves who'd found freedom through their efforts, legitimate traders who provided cover for their operations, even a few reformed criminals who'd been inspired by their example. Thiru, evening transport is requesting permission to land, announced Toma, their Andorian communications officer. It's Captain Rivera with the medical supplies from the core worlds. Kai nodded. Clear her for landing pad 3, and have Dr. Kess meet her with the emergency medical team. She mentioned they had some critical cases aboard. As the sun began to set, painting the colony in soft golden light, Kai and Vera Lynn made their way back to their private quarters. Their home was modest but comfortable, a small apartment in the residential sector with a view of the mountains that reminded. Kai of Earth, are you happy? He asked as they settled onto their balcony, watching the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. Vera Lynn considered the question seriously, her patterns shifting to warm golds and deep blues. I never thought I could be. For so long, happiness seemed like something that happened to other people. But this, she gestured to encompass not just their surroundings but their entire life together. This is more than happiness. This is purpose. Even with all the danger, the constant running, especially because of that. She turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the first stars of evening. We're living proof that love can conquer the darkest corners of the galaxy. Every being we save, every life we change. It's a victory against the forces that tried to break us both. Kai pulled her close, marveling at how natural it felt to hold her, to share her warmth and light. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't walked into that slave market. But you did, she said softly. And not just because of chance. Your father's choices led you to that moment, but your choices led you to me. You bought me to set me free, and in doing so, you freed yourself from the guilt of his legacy. A chime from inside interrupted their conversation. Vera Lynn's expression grew serious as she read the incoming message on their secure communicator. What is it? Kai asked. It's from the Zephyrian Resistance, she said, her patterns flickering with excitement and apprehension. They found a colony ship that escaped the hegemony purges. 3,000 of my people hidden in the Magellanic clouds for over a decade. Kai felt his heart skip a beat. Your people are alive? Some of them. Tears glistened in her eyes. Tears of joy this time. The Resistance wants to establish contact, but they need someone they trust to make the initial approach. Someone who understands both human and Zephyrian cultures. They want us to go, Kai realized. Yes, it would mean leaving Haven Colony at least temporarily. The journey to the Magellanic Clouds would take months, maybe years. She looked at him with an expression that encompassed hope, fear, and infinite love. But it would mean I could see my people again. Help them return to the galaxy safely. Kai didn't hesitate. When do we leave? Her luminescent patterns blazed with joy as she threw her arms around him. You don't even want to think about it? What's to think about? Your people need help, and we've gotten pretty good at that sort of thing. He kissed her forehead, tasting starlight and dreams. Besides, I've always wanted to see the Magellanic Clouds. As they held each other under the alien stars, both knew that their greatest adventure was just beginning. They'd found love in the darkness of a slave market, forged a partnership that had saved hundreds of lives, and now they were being called to something even greater. The galaxy was vast and often cruel, but as long as they faced it together, they could light even the darkest corners with hope. Above them, the first ships of the evening began their descent toward Haven Colony, carrying more souls seeking freedom. And in the distance, barely visible to the naked eye, the Magellanic Clouds beckoned with the promise of reunion and new beginnings. Their story was far from over. The end.